So I just saw Terrifier 3 in the cinema and I did not enjoy it, like, at all. If you're in any way interested in horror, which I assume you are, and active on Twitter, which I assume you are, you utter degenerate, you've probably seen Terrifier discourse all over your feed. I hadn't heard about these movies until about 2 weeks ago, and now they're all I think about, but like in the worst way possible. In the past week, I've watched all 3 Terrifier movies, and I have a lot of opinions. Love or hate the movies, people are extremely passionate about this franchise, and I want to dive deeper, so strap in, let's talk Terrifier. The Terrifier movies we know and love, or in my case know and hate, started off as short films by director Damien Leone. Leone is an SFX artist who worked on the special effects for all 3 Terrifier movies. I'd never thought about this before, but I think it's an awesome perspective to direct horror films from. You can tell from a lot of the fun gore effects in these movies, not only that Leone is genuinely talented in this respect, but he's clearly passionate about practical effects and loves showing them off. In a world of lame CG special effects, I have to appreciate the creatives here. Another thing I have to appreciate is the minuscule budget the first 2 movies, especially the first, were made on. Throughout this video, I will be criticizing these movies heavily, but I want to make it clear, I think that what they were able to achieve production-wise is really impressive on such a low budget. Terrifier was made on just $35,000, Terrifier 2 on $250,000, and Terrifier 3 on $2 million, which sounds like a lot, but honestly isn't in the world of film. I wanted to watch these movies after reading the reports of people fainting, puking, and walking out of Terrifier screenings. I want to make it clear that by no means am I a prude when it comes to horror and gore. Just take a look at my channel. I'm passionate about horror movies. It's been my favorite genre for well over a decade now, and I love a fun gore showcase. For God's sake, Saw is literally my favorite horror franchise. I say this because a lot of Terrifier defenders seem to accuse its detractors of not knowing or understanding horror movies, of having something inherently against gore showcases or kids dying in horror movies. If you want to know my opinion on that, check out my Bird Box review, where one of my active criticisms is no child death. I absolutely love the extreme gore punctuating movies like Midsommar or Evil Dead, but I also feel like these movies have a strong sense of identity, which the Terrifier series lacks. Terrifier 2016 is a straightforward, low-budget slasher, and it's the installment I enjoyed watching the most. The movie starts with an interview between talk show host Monica and Seoul Miles County Massacre survivor Vicky. I understand on this budget the script and acting aren't going to be the best, but I do find it pretty funny that this random talk show host is like unnecessarily malicious towards this woman who not only survived an evil clown attack but had her face eaten off in the process. Suddenly she's attacked by Vicky and has her face eaten off as an act of revenge. We flash back to Halloween. Vicky's sister Tara and her friend Dawn, who, is it just me or does she look distractingly similar to Justine, are walking home from a Halloween party. They're both drunk and neither can drive, so they decide to go to a late night diner to sober up. They see this menacing figure, Art the Clown, who freaks them out a bit, but they brush it off. They go to the diner, they're chilling, they're eating their food, when Art comes in with a big spooky bin bag. He's being super creepy and freaking them out, then disappears into the back. He ends up getting thrown out by the owner, and the girls head back to the car. They realise they have a flat tyre. Tara brings up Vicky and asks her to give them a lift home. Vicky heads out to get them. As she's leaving, we see Art going back to the diner and killing both the workers. After waiting in the car for a while, Tara needs to pee, so she gets out the car, leaving Dawn, and asks the guy if she can use the bathroom in the spooky abandoned building that he's working on. He lets her in, and she bumps into this mentally unwell lady, and we get this really funny reveal that the baby she's holding isn't real and is in fact a doll, as if we ever thought that was a real baby in the first place.
This is my daughter, Emily. Say hello to the pretty young lady.
Tara is caught by Art, who injects her with absolutely nothing. That needle is literally empty, but it's enough to knock her out, placebo, I guess. Tara comes to, and Art reveals he's also kidnapped Dawn, who's hanging naked upside down, and Art saws her in half while Tara watches. Tara manages to get free, but Art finds and shoots her to death. I have to pause here and comment on the fact that I don't think I've ever seen a horror movie slasher villain kill someone with a gun, and being so for real, it was so out of pocket, it really made me laugh, like, sure. The doll lady tries to reason with Art and tries to offer him a motherly touch, where we basically learn that Art has mummy issues, which might explain the whole torturing women thing.
Have you ever felt a mother's touch?
Meanwhile, Vicky's made her way into the building. She finds what she believes is Tara on the floor and starts to call the police, but lol, pranked. It's Art wearing a brown wig, wearing the doll lady's chest, which he's cut off of her. I have to question where on earth he got this wig, and while we're on that, I need to know the details of this costume situation. The opening credits show him putting on makeup, so can we assume he's also putting on these prosthetics himself every day? Like, this feels like a drag race challenge. Anyway, Vicky runs away and manages to call the police, who are on their way when Art manages to run her over whilst listening to smooth jazz, then starts eating her face. The police arrive and he shoots himself in the head and dies, or so we think. Finally, we're in the morgue as the coroner is checking out the bodies after the massacre. I totally understand this film had a micro budget, and honestly this isn't even a criticism, it just made me laugh. But why does this coroner's office look AI generated? I love that they printed out a random picture of a skeleton and called it a day. Like, we're clearly in a basement right now. We're treated to this really funny line read.
Well, seeing as how I'm going to be here for another 24 hours thanks to you, you guys think you could get me a breakfast sandwich with bacon or something with bacon?
Bacon? Really? Thought you were watching your cholesterol.
I am watching it. Watching it go up.
And suddenly the room gets all spooky, the lights are flashing, random electronics are going off, and the movie ends as the coroner unzips Art's body bag and he comes back to life for a final scare. Overall, the original Terrifier is fine. I don't really have beef with it in the way that I do the next two movies. I enjoy that the plot is easy to explain, which I cannot say about its successes. I have to respect the production of this movie, considering its budget, and as purely a gore effects showcase, this movie does the job. It's short, it has fun moments, and it doesn't try to be anything other than a low-budget slasher. Here's where we start to run into some serious problems. Terrifier 2 is a bad movie. At 2 hours 18 minutes, it's insultingly long and it's bloated with confused themes and messaging, downright weird acting performances, and bizarre plot. It kicks off exactly where the first movie ended. Art the Clown gets up, kills the coroner, heads to a laundromat and cleans himself off. This is where we meet the little pale girl, who's basically his sidekick in the movie. We learn that only Art can see her, get a kill in the laundromat, and off he goes into the night. We meet our protagonist Sienna, her brother Jonathan, and her mother Barbara. Generally speaking, the acting in this movie is fine, but Sarah Voigt, who plays Barbara, gives some downright bizarre performances.
Look at these drawings! This isn't like Daddy.
He was sick. Why can't you understand? He didn't know who he was or what he was doing half the time, and this bullshit is nothing but a fucking reminder.
No!
I want this out of my house.
You're such a bitch!
Don't you ever say that to me again.
I don't really think this actress understood the assignment. Barbara has recently lost her husband in tragic circumstances. We learn later that Sienna's dad was suffering from a brain tumour and drove into a generator, dying in a car fire, and is struggling to raise her two teenage children alone. As such, despite wanting to be kind and loving to her children, she has a short fuse, resulting in a lot of shouting and arguments. Listen, this is a very common response to stress and trauma, and as someone with a turbulent relationship with my own mother, I am very familiar with this dynamic. However, Sarah Voigt's execution is absolutely bizarre and very amdram. Anyway, Sienna's brother, Jonathan, appears to have a creepy obsession with Art the Clown, wanting to dress as him for Halloween. He also has a morbid fascination with death and torture, which makes his mother and sister very uncomfortable. Sienna goes to bed and we're treated to an utterly ridiculous, long, drawn-out and unnecessary, nearly 10-minute long dream sequence where Art the Clown tries to kill her, but she fights back using a sword she owns in real life. She wakes up to the sword on fire and her room ablaze. Hi, editing Tabby here. To make this point clear, I want to show you this entire dream sequence in 20 times speed. It might even be 25. This is as fast as my MacBook will let me go in iMovie, which I edit on. And this is ridiculous, guys. Are you kidding me? And nothing happens. It has no, like, it's so unnecessary. It's so unnecessary. Oh my god. Look, it's still going. It's still going. But Tabby, the dream sequence is necessary. It's a divine test where she proves she's worthy of using the magic sword. Yeah, alright, relax. What if I told you the entire magic plot could stand to be removed and the movie would be improved, like, a lot? Jonathan sees the little pale girl, which makes no sense, but whatever. Sienna sees Art the clown in a Halloween store and he kills the shop owner. Barbara is killed and Jonathan is kidnapped by Art. Fast forward and Sienna goes out for Halloween with her friend Brooke. Pal Ellie was meant to be there, but curious, she's not picking up her phone. See Ellie getting ready and she's killed by Art in a scene that Terrifier fans refer to as the most brutal torture scene of all time in all of cinema. So after this incredibly mediocre scene, Brooke and Sienna are at a nightclub and it's revealed that Brooke spikes Sienna with MDMA and Sienna sees the little pale girl in the club and has a panic attack. She gets a call from Jonathan, who's actually the little pale girl who can perfectly mimic voices like the Hunger Games or something, asking her to come and get him at the old abandoned carnival. This might be the most UK pilled take ever, but does every American town just have like an old abandoned mine or an old abandoned carnival or something? Anyway, at the Terrifier ride, Art kills Brooke and her boyfriend and Sienna has to face him. After a long struggle, including Sienna dying and being immediately resurrected by the magic sword, they eventually decapitate Art, killing him. In the mid-credit scene, Vicky from the first movie is in a psych ward. She gives birth to Art's head and writes Vicky plus Art in blood on the walls. This is the first movie in the series where we see overt sort of like demonic and possession themes. We don't really have that in the first movie. It's very slightly referenced. It just goes downhill from here. Terrifier 3 was, for me, the worst of the Terrifier movies. It follows Sienna and her brother again. Sienna is struggling with PTSD and hallucinations 5 years after the events of the previous movie. The movie starts with Art and Vicky fleeing the psych ward she was being kept on and heading to an abandoned house. Now, I was reading a plot summary whilst writing this to refresh my memories, and it literally reads, Victoria smashes her face into a bathroom mirror and uses a glass shard to enter hibernation in a bathtub, and Art sits in a rocking chair in the attic. The two become dormant. Being real, this literally never would have come across on first watching. These movies really like to overcomplicate things for no reason. Sienna visits her aunt and uncles for Christmas after spending time in a psych ward. Jonathan is in college, trying to move on after the events 5 years prior. Art kills a bunch of people at a bar and pretends to be a mall Santa before blowing up a bunch of kids. Sienna sees Art at the mall and tries to tell her family, but no one believes her for some reason. Flash forward through a bunch of unnecessary scenes and random kills. Sienna goes back to the Terrifier to retrieve the magical sword, which is like such a Mad Lib of a sentence. Sienna comes downstairs to find that her whole family have been killed by Art except for her aunt and her youngest cousin. Her aunt is killed and she fights to save her young cousin, but she is eventually swallowed by a portal in the floor, which is opened by Vicky's blood after she's decapitated. Sure, who gives a fuck? Art runs away and Sienna vows to get payback on him for killing her family. If you've made it this far, you'll have gleamed that I didn't really enjoy any of the Terrifier movies. I enjoyed the original far more since it's a straightforward kind of campy grindhouse slasher, and at just 90 minutes and on its minuscule budget, that's all I'd expect from it. Ironically, the movies start to fall down a lot once they get bigger budgets and try to do more. Before I get into any proper criticism, I want to say I mean no shade to any of the actors or anyone who's worked on these films. Lauren Levera, who plays Sienna, is very active on Twitter and often posts about how much fun she had on set and how proud she is of the movies. By all accounts, everyone from Damien Leone to the little girl who plays Sienna's cousin in 3 had a great time making these films, and I'm genuinely really happy that they did. I also have to give the movies props for doing so well as independent horror films. In a world of oversaturated Hollywood blockbusters that play it safe and don't do anything particularly creative or fun, I'm glad the Terrifier movies are doing so well purely because of what they represent. Put it this way, I'm glad Terrifier 3 is running rings around Joker. However, that doesn't mean I don't have any issues with the movies. My main issue with 2 and 3 is that they can't figure out what they want to be. I've been seeing tons of Terrifier fans online saying things like begging people to talk about the Terrifier movies beyond just how gory they are, and this film delved into PTSD and survivor's guilt more deeply than most slashers. So sure, I'll talk about it. The movies are boring, confused, and drawn out. I find it frustrating that fans of the series so desperately want Terrifier to be more than gore, because that's exactly where they start to fall down. The second and third movies switch from wanting to be goofy splatter movies to elevated psychological horror so fast you get whiplash. I truly couldn't care less about these character development scenes, and PTSD and survivor's guilt have been done so many times in slashers, I've lost count. The scenes that portray these mental health issues are unintentionally funny too. They tend to start with the character seeing something stressful or triggering and end with them downing a bunch of pills as if that's how psychiatric medication works. There are much more creative and subtle ways to depict PTSD or survivor's guilt than just having the character pop a bunch of antidepressants when they get triggered. You might be asking why I'm calling for subtlety from Terrifier, and I'd like to be clear, I am only saying this because fans of the series want to pretend it's clever horror for some reason. There is nothing wrong with liking a silly splatter movie. Like I said before, I love Saw, Scream, and all the classic slashers. They're fun and don't need to be overcomplicated. Terrifier takes itself so seriously with these character development scenes, yet also wants to be a goofy, campy slasher, going full force with the comic moments in the third movie. These movies can't figure out what they want to be. I think part of the reason fans of the series want to pretend they're so much deeper than your average slasher is because once you remove the special effects showcase, the plot is super contrived. In 2 and 3, we're dealing with themes of mental health, religion, demons, and magic for some reason. I should probably address my biases here. I don't really care about demons or fantasy or paranormal horror, or I do and I don't. What I'm trying to say is I like when it's done well and I don't like when it's not done well. I also had to read a few articles and watch a few videos on the religious imagery as I wasn't raised around Christianity, and to be honest, most of the more subtle references just passed me by. I would say that Terrifiers 2 and 3 are insultingly long. At 2 hours 18 minutes and 2 hours 10 respectively, they're trying to do way too much. There's no reason a goofy slasher movie should be longer than 2 hours. After watching Terrifier 2 twice in full to write this video, I'd say there's easily 30 minutes that could be cut, and I'd start with the 10-minute dream sequence. I've only seen Terrifier 3 once in the cinema, and I am not going back to see it again, but I'd venture to say there are tons of bloated character development scenes and kill scenes that have nothing to do with the plot that could be culled. And it's not just me that thinks this. Damien Leone himself went on record to say that the next Terrifier will be around 90 minutes since he feels this is what fans would prefer. In contrast with what a lot of the fans feel the main criticism is, that there's no story, just gore, I feel that the real problem is there's too much story. Another issue I have with the movies is Art the Clown. Do you truly think David Howard Thornton, who portrays him, gives a great performance, but the disproportionate response to him as a villain is absolutely wild to me. I've been seeing people online calling him an industry plant villain, and while I wouldn't go that far, the character really doesn't gel with me, and I can't wrap my head around why it does some people. I've seen multiple fans say that Art is on his way to being the biggest horror icon in the last 20 years, likening him to horror juggernaut Freddy Krueger. Put some respect on Jigsaw's name. I also think Art's potential icon status is massively diluted by his random unnecessary sidekicks. There's a lot of love in the fandom for the little pale girl and Vicky as Art's sidekicks, with Leone choosing to develop Vicky's character as more of a sidekick after regretting the lack of development she gets in the first movie. I feel that these sidekicks actually distract from David Howard Thornton's performance whilst not actually adding much. Sure, they shot themselves in the foot a little having a mute villain, but tons of slashers have done that before without needing sidekicks to come in with quips and exposition dumps, which is basically Vicky's role in T3. There's a fair amount of social commentary going on throughout the Terrifier movies. In 1, we learn he has mummy issues and that's why he kills and tortures women. In 3, there's some commentary on the ethics of true crime. I do have to question why we're having these conversations via the Terrifier movies though. I said earlier that I love the Saw movies, and whilst the main theme of Saw 6 is the American healthcare system, which feels way too political for a Saw movie, it's not like the movie or Saw fans are running around claiming it's an intelligent critique like Terrifier fans are with these themes. If anything, it's a bit of an inside joke in the Saw fandom. I originally wanted to watch these movies after seeing reviews about how misogynistic they are, and as an annoying feminist who sees misogyny in absolutely everything, I was curious to see how bad it got. And it's pretty bad. From naked Dawn being sawed in half from the vagina in a scene that's clearly meant to represent penetration and sexual violence, to Ellie's acid attack, which is specifically an anti-woman hate crime, right after she's stripped naked by Art, there are a lot of misogynistic scenes throughout the series. For the record, I don't inherently have an issue with violence against women being portrayed in movies. Femicide happens every day, and it would be ridiculous for anyone to expect it to not be portrayed in art. What I have an issue with is the tasteless way it's portrayed in these movies. I don't believe these movies are deliberately misogynistic. Damien Leone has gone on record to say that he's the furthest thing from a misogynist, and the character of Sienna, who he says is based on his two sisters, appears to be a direct response to the misogynist allegations brought about by the first movie. To be clear, Art does not just kill women. In 3, he even kills a male character in the same way he killed Dawn in the first movie as a gory homage. However, the implications of a man killing a man and a man killing a woman are always different, and directors should take care when depicting femicide. I want to talk about Psycho quickly, the first ever slasher directed by Hitchcock in 1960. In this film, Norman Bates kills women because of his own toxic relationship with his mother, the same motivation Art is revealed to have. I also recently saw Trap, the M. Night Shyamalan film, and the killer in that movie has the same motivation. Honestly, mummy issues in horror could be a whole video on its own. However, at no point watching Psycho do I feel like I'm watching misogynistic torture porn like I do with Terrifier. I believe that part of this is the fact that at no point watching Psycho do I feel like femicide is played for laughs. I mentioned earlier that I saw Terrifier 3 in the cinema, and the audience was laughing and reacting positively to a lot of the scenes where women were being killed or tortured. Now, I'm not trying to say that the people laughing or responding positively to these scenes are outwardly misogynistic or find femicide funny in any way. However, I do think that the reason people were laughing or responding positively to these scenes is because we're made to feel like it's so ridiculous it could never possibly happen in real life. But these things do happen every day to women. Let's take a positivity break. The marketing for this movie is awesome. I've been really enjoying the sort of guerrilla marketing style horror movies have been doing, like the Smell campaign and Terrifier's recent marketing. Art the Clown freaking people out in Spirit Halloween and Target is really fun to see, and I love how much everyone involved is enjoying it. Art the Clown also features in an Ice 9 Kills music video, and I have so much to say about this band, but this 1-minute video is more entertaining than the entire Terrifier trilogy. You've probably seen this image floating around online of the warning to viewers about the gore in the third movie, and heard reports of people throwing up and mass walkouts during screenings. As someone who has seen all 3 movies, my assessment is that these claims are either massively exaggerated or fabricated altogether. The gore may be extreme for casual horror fans or people who see like one scary movie a year at Halloween, but if you're into the genre, you certainly won't be throwing up at your screening. I actually tried really hard to deep dive and research this style of marketing because I feel like every single horror movie that uses like some kind of gore does this. I always see reports of mass walkouts, people throwing up, these night vision cameras showing people freaking out and tweaking when they watch these movies. But every single time I go, as someone who's into horror, I always come away really disappointed that like this didn't happen to me. My personal conspiracy theory is that their focus group is literally a bunch of grannies, and they show them this movie and these are the people puking and walking out and having heart attacks, and they're why the ambulance has to be there. I will also say that I have seen reports about the Terrifier marketing team showing the movie under the guise of like a mystery movie for focus groups. So it was audiences of people who had no idea that this would be a horror film at all. And I believe that this is probably where most of the walkouts happened. If you don't watch horror and you're put in front of Terrifier, you probably will walk out and throw up. Overall, I think it's safe to say I won't be rushing to the cinema to see the 4th installment of the Terrifier series. I hope you enjoyed this video. Talk to me about it in the comments. I read every single comment, so I'd love to know your thoughts. Have you seen any of the Terrifiers? Have you seen Terrifier 3? Will you be seeing them? Please let me know. Argue with me. I love it. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know. Bye.